What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin, and today I wanted to show you how I transplant and care for and even train my Acer shirasawanum, or the golden full moon maple. Now, this maple here, it's beautiful, ornate, pretty leaves, have won a lot of awards. And it's a perfect tree if you have an apartment and you need to do some container gardening, or you have a city garden, or just any kind of balcony, or any kind of small area. This tree would definitely be a beautiful focal point for your garden. I believe they only get to be about 15 to 20 feet tall, and they have about the same kind of spread too. So they will get kind of wide, but they don't really get as tall. So they are considered a medium-sized shrub or a small deciduous tree. So they're perfect for bonsai, and if you know me, you know that's what I'm going to do with this tree. So the first step would be to go ahead and make sure I get my bonsai pot set up for this tree. And again, if you watched the last video, I'm doing the mica pot. So the first thing I need to do is go ahead and install these little guards over the drainage holes so we don't lose all of our substrate. Now, I've got my wire clippers here, and then I've got the wire that I want to go ahead and use for these guys right here too. And while I'm at it, I'll go ahead and take out my pruning shears and my root rake, because I know I'm going to need that too. Bubba's spazzing out. And then I will go ahead and sanitize my pruning shears and all the tools that I'm going to be using today. Now, I always sanitize with some rubbing alcohol, but you can substitute with some hot soap and water. Pat him down a little bit. I'm not really using him on the plant, more on the pot, but I'll just go ahead and sanitize him just to be safe. So this will be used on the plant, so I'll sanitize this really well. And the pruning shears will definitely be on the roots, trimming it up so it'll have ample room to grow out in its new pot. I believe this is the mica 9, so it's about 9 inches, 9.50, about 9.5 inches, something like that, somewhere around there. Alright, so now to secure the covers, we're going to go ahead and take some wire. Just a little bit of thick wire so we know it'll hold it in place. And I'll go ahead and cut that in half. And it'll be a little bit longer, so I'll just go ahead and kind of just fold it into a U shape. And then just kind of feed it down in here in the holes. And we'll push the wire all the way down until it can't go no more. Maybe even kind of press it down with your thumb a little bit. I've got the sturdier guard, so they can take a little bit of a beating and still be kind of straight. And then you'll just kind of separate the wires underneath, one going one direction, one going the other, to kind of hold it in place. And then take your wire cutters and trim off. You want to leave about an inch, maybe an inch and a half, that way it has some room to kind of hold on to. And do it with both sides there. First one's down, and then we'll go ahead and do the second one. And before you cut the wire, you want it to be a little even. That way you're not cutting off way too much slack on one end, or shortening yourself a little bit on wire. And then kind of press down and make sure that your little drain covers are in there securely. And now our pot is ready for our golden full moon maple. So next what I'll do is I've got my trusty, crusty, rusty, dusty little bucket under here to catch any debris, and I'll go ahead and kind of squeeze the plastic around the root base just to make sure I'm loosening up the roots, and then kind of helping loosen any of the longer roots down at the bottom. It may kind of hang onto the pot and not let your tree come out. And then just kind of gently tug on it. You don't want to pull it so hard. Alright, now I watered him yesterday, so you can hear all that soil just kind of dropping off. I'll take my root rake and gently kind of just go through it and kind of let the soil fall off. Alright, now, let's say as a general rule of thumb, you can remove about 3/4 of a plant's root mass without actually hurting your plant. So we'll go ahead and cut off a lot of this that's really long until I have a root mass that's about an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches. And then if I even wanted to, I could just kind of separate a little bit more of the substrate out from the roots just to kind of weaken this root ball here. You want the roots to kind of be able to kind of freely explore their container, so to speak. So we'll loosen it up some, and that'll give the roots kind of room to spread out and look for water and nutrients and everything in their container. And then hopefully, since it's a larger pot, he'll have room to kind of put on a lot more mass on top while his roots are kind of spreading out and establishing themselves. And then I'll put some of my soil down here on the bottom. Now, of course, I'm using the Miracle-Gro Cacti Citrus and Succulent. That's just because these roots are considered a little bit shallow. So they need an extensive watering to actually help them thrive and kind of survive. So if you have a kind of hardy substrate that will hold on to water for a long time, you will end up drowning this plant and kind of doing more harm than good. So as a general rule of thumb with these guys, you do want something that will be kind of porous and drain relatively well to help out with all the waterings this tree may need. Alright, now I did add in about an inch of kind of some raised garden bed soil with some compost in it just to kind of give it a little bit more heft and a little bit more nutrients. And I didn't want something that was going to hang on to a lot of water, so I didn't put a whole lot in there. Now all I'm doing now is making a little divot with my hands, someplace for the little root ball to sit. And if your root ball is a little uneven like mine, just kind of trim it up some, because if you have a smaller pot, it may end up sending your plant off center a little bit. Alright, now I'm trying to get a good amount of those nutrients over top of the root ball and kind of just in there, and then I'll just kind of go ahead and fill it in with the rest. And with this guy, he is a graft, so you take special care not to cover up the graft area right there because that can invite rot and all kinds of other pests or anything like that into the tree, any kind of disease in there to kind of hurt the plant. I've got a little bit of my bonsai soil. I'll mix in kind of around the roots. I'm mostly going to top it with that just because of aesthetic purposes, but I just kind of want that to be in there around the roots too. You want to press all the way around the top of the soil to help alleviate all these air bubbles that are down in there. They can wreak havoc on the roots and end up killing your plant. So compact the soil and then add more soil in there and compact that. And then when you're done, you can water the tree to help get rid of any other remaining air bubbles that we may have missed. So this bonsai soil on top, just for aesthetic purposes. Alright, and now as the name implies, the leaves are one of the more broader of the Japanese maple. It's got kind of sharp pointy lobes on here. The leaves are palmate, and in the spring they start off a beautiful kind of bright yellow, and then as the seasons progress, it'll turn a kind of chartreuse, almost a mixture of green and yellow. And then in the spring, it'll get a small cluster of upright little flowers that are red, and that'll give way to the red samaras, or the seeds, the little one-winged seeds that are indicative of maples. And that contrast between the kind of chartreuse and the red samaras is beautiful. So this tree is a really kind of ornate, kind of ornamental, beautiful tree. And like I said, it doesn't get too large. And they're really easy to take care of. Really, the only thing you have to remember with these guys is that they do kind of have a little shallow roots, so they do need to be watered a little bit more often than other trees do, and not to prune them aside from like dead wood or broken limbs unless it's in the fall and the tree has gone dormant, because this tree is a bleeder and sap will come out, and you will kind of have problems with that. But other than that, they're really easy, kind of beautiful plants to have. And if you don't have a whole lot of space, this tree is one that you want to consider getting because it is really pretty. And they're easy to train as bonsais. They like to be any place that gets about full sun, and then kind of shade also. And I say full sun kind of with caution, because these leaves can burn out relatively easily. So if you do place it somewhere and you're worried about the summer sun, make sure at night it's kind of in the shade, or afternoon it'll be in the shade. That way it's kind of protected from the sun and during the hottest part of the day. And like I said, with water, it just needs about a moderate amount of waterings, maybe just a little bit more than your other trees. And again, that's just because of the shallow roots. Substrate, like I said, because of the waterings, you need to have a porous, kind of easy-going substrate that will drain really easy. And if you keep a saucer under your container, make sure you empty it about after 20 minutes. Plants and trees don't really hold on to much water after about 20 minutes, so you can go ahead and drain that. These guys don't really like to be standing in water all day. I believe the zones for the USDA, they classify between 5 and 9, and I see some that they even say 8, just because it gets kind of hot down in 9, but they can be as far north as zone 5. So here in Kentucky, it's the perfect tree, ornamental tree to have in your yard, and I do love it. It is a beautiful, beautiful, showy plant, and I think I did a good choice with this brown kind of mica pot. I think the contrast when they start to flower and get their seeds or samaras, they're going to be beautiful, and the brown versus the chartreuse. Oh yes, and also in the fall, before these trees lose their leaves, they'll turn anywhere from a kind of orange to a red, and even have kind of tints of purple in there too. So these trees are really known for their leaves and how beautiful they are. And that's really all I know about this plant. They don't really have too many pests, aside from what your normal maples will get, so they're relatively easy to take care of in that sense too. Fertilizers, just any kind of all-purpose kind of tree fertilizer, the spikes, or kind of slow-release bonsai fertilizer will help your plant out too, just to kind of get a little bit more bushy or a little bit bigger. So make sure that you don't feed them a whole bunch unless you're just wanting to put on a bunch of mass. And in a bonsai pot, they're really not going to do too much in the way of mass. So if you're really wanting to thicken up your trunk, the archaic way is to just put it in the ground. But I've done some research, and I found that if you take a little plastic basin, something that's not relatively too thick, and you kind of cut some holes into the bottom, some relatively large holes, it'll leave room for the roots to kind of go out of the container and into the soil instead of encircling the container and getting all pot bound or root bound. Then the roots can kind of go into the soil and get all the nutrients they need, and then whenever you want to take it up after it's been in there for a little bit, you can cut the roots along the base of the basin and then lift your plant up and go on and be on your way. Ideally, now I would go ahead and kind of trim back any leaves on top, but since this guy is a little bit of a bleeder with the sap, I don't want to remove anything right now. The best time, like I said, would be in the fall when the tree has already lost all of its leaves and going into a dormant cycle. Then we can kind of cut back a little bit. But as just with any kind of bonsai, you're really just kind of removing leaves that are in the way of other leaves, kind of getting their maximum light. And then you kind of want to remove any branches that cross one another, because as they grow, they'll kind of rub each other raw and then create openings for disease and rot and anything like that to kind of go into the tree. But so I said like this, because of the season now, I'm not going to go ahead and do that. Well, I think that's really all I know that I want to say about this tree. While you guys are at it, why don't you leave me a comment and let me know what's your favorite kind of Japanese maple or your favorite bonsai in general. With my Japanese maples, I like the showy ones, like the Golden Full Moon, or the Blood Goods, or any kind of the red Japanese maples. Those are right on track. And then while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime I've uploaded a new video. You guys take it easy, have a good one, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Thank you, YouTube. Real quick, I just wanted to thank my Patreon subscribers. Pam donated this month. If you are interested in supporting my channel, please check the link in the description box below.